Welcome to All Out in the Open. I'm Charlie Bird here with Ben Shalati. This week we have an awesome All Together episode, and these episodes are totally focused on community building at the intersection of LGBTQ and religion.
And we have a bit of a crossover episode today because Liz and Michael are interviewing Claire, who's another host, and our friend Jen Dille. And they talk about the work they're doing to build community in Arizona, and I love it. I am so proud of them. Jen is actually one of those people who became a random friend, like 5 years ago. She reached out to the podcast email, was like, hey, I'd love to help. How can I help? And I was like, let's talk, because I had time back then, and we did.
Luckily, she's really organizationally structured, which the two of us are not so much.
Yeah. And so Jen has saved our butts so many times, and she is just awesome. But I just love the work they're doing to share stories and build community where they are. And what they're doing is something that anyone in their community can do.
It can be replicated.
And that's what we hope people get from this episode.
Yeah, we hope you enjoy it.
Well, welcome to our edition of All Out in the Open this week. We are so happy, Michael and I are, to have Jen Dille and Clare Dalton with us today. This has been on our mind since we started. We've interviewed just a variety of amazing, whether they're people who work in politics or people who work in the LGBTQ space, or we've had some really amazing spiritual leaders, and we've had on our mind that because Michael and I are focusing on bridge building and building community, for people who are listening and who are interested in this space and what they can do, we wanted to have Jen and Clare here to give some real life. This is scalable in our communities. You don't need to be some Insta-famous person. You don't need to be, have a high job or calling or whatever. And what we can be doing in our homes, in our wards, in our communities and neighborhoods. And I just love what Jen and Clare have done. So first, we just tell us a little bit about yourselves first. Jen, please. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Jen Dille, and I professionally work as a project coordinator at the Center for Action and Contemplation that was started by Richard Rohr.
Such a dream job.
Yes, it is a great institution. I really love it. And so, yes, I've been an ally for the last about 4 years. Once I have been learning more about this space, I've lived in Gilbert, Arizona for 20 years. I'm married and have 4 really fun kids, 1 grandkid.
Just on that, tell me what drew you to this space? You don't have a child in the space that you know of. And so what was it that prompted you to become interested in this space?
Yeah, so I feel like it's a long story. I feel like, should we introduce Clare and then I can go tell my story?
All right.
Yeah.
So Clare Dalton, who are you? I've never even heard of you before.
I'm Clare Dalton. So glad to be here. Thank you for inviting us. I feel like we should have a third chair, and Greg Peterson should be here for this, because he was definitely in the genesis of that. But I'm an Arizona girl. I'm from Arizona, and I had a career teaching seminary for the church education system for 8 years. And since then, I have started working part-time for a law firm, which is really fun, and being able to kind of switch talents in different space, and then opened up a lot of time to be able to do more of this work that I really love. So being able to do the podcast, to work on gatherings, curriculum more every week, and then to also do some side projects, which are hopefully becoming main projects, which is like our Belong Youth Conference that we've been working on. So a lot of different projects lined up and going, but just so glad to be here. And in the story that Jen's going to tell, I get to be a wonderful part of it. And so it's kind of fun to see how the storylines weave together.
I love it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Please share.
Okay, so in June of 2021, my daughter Mara had come home from her mission, and she was telling me about how about 4 or 5 of her friends had come out as gay or bi around that time. Okay. And I'm going to say something that's a little cringy, but I'm saying it to kind of normalize people's learning process.
Where you were.
Yeah, and where I was at the time. And so I said, oh, what is this fad with everyone coming out as gay? And please believe me that it hurts me to say that, but that was just my mindset. And she was, and my greatest teachers have been my children, of course. And she was like, Mom, you don't say that. That's not what it is. That's not true. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, what do I say? What is this? Like, you tell me what to say. Like, I don't know this space very well. Yeah. And she said, well, I'm just learning this space myself. And so I started asking her all these questions, and she's like, I don't know. And so she said, I have heard there's this podcast called Questions from the Closet. Right. And she's like, go listen to that. And like, you can learn from them. So I was up in Provo where she lived at the time visiting, drove home, and I just started binging Questions from the Closet. And I love this. And I still remember like where I was driving when Ben and Charlie were finishing season 1, and they said, oh, we need to get organized. We're going to take a little break. So like, we'll be back in a little bit. And I was thinking like, wait, no, don't go. I just barely found you. And the Holy Ghost was like, okay, they said they need help organizing them. Like, I'm a project manager. Yeah. I could help them. And the Holy Ghost was like, volunteer. That's awesome. And so I came home, like reached out to the email address. Ben called me the next day and he's like, sure, we could use some help planning live events. And what's funny is they said, oh, we need to get organized. I'm like, they were actually really good at like getting guests on. And so I was like, that's it? Just live events? Like, okay. I just really had this strong desire to be doing more and more. And so that was in June. And then that fall, my other daughter, Tessa, came home from school one day and she was like, Mom, my seminary teacher just came out. And I was like, whoa, that's big news. Like, wow. And then I was thinking more about it as I was learning about this space. I was like, wait, that's got to be really hard. And so I was like, let me just message her on Facebook. And so I was like, hey, Claire, Tessa's mom here. Like, just really hope you're feeling the love of the community. And she wrote back and was kind of like, maybe we should talk. And so it was really interesting timing because Ben was coming down for Thanksgiving to go down to Tucson and was stopping by at our house to have dinner. Yeah. And so I was like, Claire, why don't you come to dinner on Saturday? And so it was so fun because Ben and Claire had like both reached out to each other, but like just not quite connected. And so
we had missed times in our time in Tucson. Like we know a lot of the same people, but we never met in Tucson. And so, he took Institute classes from my dad. His best friend, Diana, I actually grew up in the same ward with her. We're the same age. Wow. Like, there's all these ties, but we had never, like, actually crossed paths, and I just heard his name. And so Jen was like, oh, do you want to come over? And I was like, yeah, I think I do.
And I still remember walking Claire when she was leaving to the front door, and we both kind of looked at each other, and we were like, I think we need to start something. Yeah. And so we're like, okay. Let's keep talking, and we started Ally Nights based on what Ben had done in Tucson.
Right. When someone says, hey, I need to get organized, it's like ear candy for Jen, right? And when she sees an opportunity of like, I see the potential of what someone could do here, Jen is so good at being like, hey, there's an opportunity. And I go, oh, yeah, you're right. And then she's like, no, hello, ding, ding, ding. Like it was you. I was talking to you. Yeah. And so multiple times Jen has said, well, we should talk about this. And then we do talk about it. And then something amazing happens. And that's just kind of how it works. Like, it's really, it sounds like we just pulled that from like a storybook, right? Like, you're like, ooh, this is how it happens. But like, honestly, that's how it works. And that's how I'm finding it works, is it's from the pull, the internal pulls that we feel of, I need to do something in the space, or I have a thought. Yeah. And when you follow it and tug on that thread and you get a little bit more and you pull people in, which is a strength that Jen has, is just connecting people and going, we have an idea, let's sit down and actually talk about the logistics. And that's how we started the monthly Ally Nights that we have, which is literally just 2 people. And then we pulled in Greg and we're like, hey, can we do this? Yeah. And it happens every month, and I'm still like not sure how, but like that's how it works. Is everybody does a little bit in a space instead of thinking, well, it doesn't really matter unless we're having thousands.
And I remember going to dinner at your house, and I'm trying to remember, it was before Ally Night started, and we met Greg and we met some other people at your house, and we're just talking through like, how can we actually do this? So it didn't just like happen overnight, but there was some planning and thought put into it, but it wasn't it wasn't rocket science either. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, that is definitely something I wanted to point out is I know a lot of our listeners don't live in Arizona. And so
Right.
maybe they don't know, but Liz and Michael, you two are legends.
Oh,
and
good.
you do. I knew you wouldn't like me to say that, but I just want to name, like, both of you are pillars in this community. And I just wish everyone could know that and like know your full story, because really, once I started asking questions like, wait, is anybody meeting in this space?
Right.
Like, yeah, so many people were like, talk to Liz Macdonald. And I had a really neat experience with you. Like, I was looking through the Lift and Love stories, and your family was featured. And again, I don't always get dramatic promptings from the Holy Ghost, but it was the Holy Ghost was like, you will be in that house. And I was like, what is even going? It's just a picture of this
Okay,
cute
you've
family.
never told me that.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
and then I didn't know how to get in touch with you, so I reached out to Lift and Love. I'm like, can you give me your contact information? And of course, they were like, that's not really our role to like give out people's contact. So then, I talked to Ben. I was like, hey, I saw this amazing story. He's like, oh yeah, I'll give you Liz's phone number. And then immediately when I went to your house, I got to meet Michael, and it was just, oh yeah. So I've definitely ridden on the work that the two of you have done. Like, we haven't carved this out of nothing. Like,
No, but-
the two of you are doing amazing things, and we're like, hey, let's talk. You can teach me. And so I appreciate how much I've learned from the two of you as an ally.
Oh, you're so sweet.
That's very nice.
Yeah, it's very kind. I love this model of like, meeting in your homes and meeting in person, building community. I don't know if any of y'all are aware though that that's like how LGBTQ organizing started in the 50s and 40s and 60s, was like people meeting, because it was actually a criminal act to be gay then. And so you had to meet in private because you could get arrested otherwise. And it was often illegal to congregate. Like, I mean, all sorts of laws existed in this country that kept LGBTQ people from having a public life and creating a public community. So we created private communities, right, in people's houses. I think that's one of the things that I love about the nights that you all do is it's kind of like, it feels like that core of organizing still that is the reason why we have been able to accomplish so much in this country, right? And the reason why we're going to be able to survive this time. I think it's actually something people need to go back to in the larger LGBTQ community.
Yeah, that was something that I was thinking about today. And it's so just to make sure we've given enough context, we host a monthly ally night that we don't have a Facebook page. It's just an email list, like really grassroots, that Jen is in charge of the email list, and we send out like a monthly email and then a reminder. But basically it's right now we're hosting at my house because we have the space. We steal chairs from Liz because she has the chairs. So we're like, this is all coordinating, right? But just so people know, the first Sunday night of every month in Mesa, we meet and we alternate between having an LGBTQ speaker and them being able to share their story. Sometimes we give them like a topic of, we think you have a lot of experience in this. Can you share this? Sometimes it's just tell us, about you. And then on the other months, we have a panel. So we've had different panels. So we've had like a parent and a child. We've had a couple people with different views on a perspective. I also write the gatherings curriculum with my friend Austin, and so sometimes we will insert that for a month. Sometimes that happens to be April and October, because that first Sunday of the month, sometimes people need to debrief general conference, depending on what has or hasn't been said. So we'll have a space for that. Like, let's talk about it. What were the talks that resonated? Which were the ones that hurt? And then we'll go, okay, let's go have a positive experience in the scriptures, and we'll do a little bit of the gatherings curriculum. So that's kind of how we've set it up. We started in Jen's house, and Greg Peterson, who used to be down here. Gosh, I miss Greg. He's the president of Salt Lake Community College. So he has moved away from Arizona for Utah. We still love him. No, just so much respect and love for him. But he was our first speaker at your house. And I vividly remember that. I vividly remember sitting there, and I remember some of the analogies that he used. I remember the space being filled. And it was such a testimony to me of like, oh my gosh, people want to hear our stories. People want to learn. People want to understand this space. And then we moved it over to my house because we could shove a couple more chairs in there, and your house was being renovated. So we were like, let's switch. We've had to jump over to Liz's house sometimes when I had some water damage going through at our house. And it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But basically it's just having a space where people know that they can come and then getting the word out. And we've had people say, why don't you have a Facebook group? And we just really like to have it be an email. Give us your email. We'll put you on there. And then people show up. I think that's the most amazing part is that when you create a space and say, this is what we're doing and we want you to be a part of it, people show up. And people show up every month, which is always amazing to me.
That's like some of the logistics is a place, but it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Nope. And we don't even clean my house every time that
It
people are
always
coming
looks
over.
lovely, but a space, and then you know, chairs, and especially within our community, people have chairs, and then you have treats sometimes. People sometimes bring things, but it's not required.
Nope.
I think in our community, in our culture, we really feel that. But so that's some of the logistics. Then also how you've chosen to do it with the emails. You can use, social media, and then also arranging for presenters or however you want, however you want to do that.
And we've had it be small. We've had 10 people before come over and had like a really intimate conversation. We just kind of moved my couches so we were sitting in a circle and we just talked. Like it's not about the numbers for us. And we've had close to 70, I think, for different things, right? So that's a lot of variety. So we never really know what we're preparing for. Yeah. But it really starts out as just small, right? The people who want to be there, creating a space for people who want to be there. And this is a different project that I work on, but it's also interwoven, is the reason that we created the Gatherings curriculum, which is a study guide that runs parallel to Come Follow Me, but is inclusive to read scriptures through an LGBTQ lens. And one of the reasons why we created that is because we wanted people to have something, right? If you're like, I don't know anyone to come and speak, and only the people that I know who are LGBTQ don't want to stand up in front of someone, well, then you can just invite people over to your house to study this curriculum, right? And it can be as intense as, here is a scripture chapter, let's read it together, go through it, or it can be as simple as, hey, here's a question, let's just talk about it. We do these share your story questions so that if someone wants to share about their life experience, it's written in there, right? So I think that some people get nervous of like, gosh, I have to come up with a guest every month or quarterly, and it's like, if that's stressful, then you can just have people come over for a conversation.
Right, of course.
That's what we want, is the conversations to happen. It's not about, at least for me, it's not about the presentation. And everyone knows that, right? You come to my house, you're not going to get the pretty centerpiece or the cookies that look, if there's cookies, then that's the win, right? Not how they look, but how they taste.
I've always had good things there, and it always looks
good
lovely.
to know.
Well, and I really appreciate you pointing that out, Liz, because in the beginning, as I was like trying to project manage it, I would tell people like, oh, please RSVP so we know how many chairs to have and try to coordinate the treats. And after a while, I was like, no, let's keep this simple. Let's keep this manageable and sustainable.
Right.
And Michael, I'm really glad you brought up the history of LGBTQ people gathering. And it reminds me of this quote that I wanted to share by Margaret Mead. And it's something to the effect of like, never doubt that a small group of people working together can change the world. Indeed, that's the only thing it ever has. And so, I think that's the power, is just keeping it sustainable and simple and approachable.
Right.
Because I feel like Ben really taught me the power of story and the power of proximity. And that was my original desire in getting to know Clare, is like, wow, you have this amazing relationship with the Godhead. And the way she talks about her conversations with Christ and her prayer life and her spiritual life, it was very intriguing to me, because I'm like, I've never heard anyone talk like this about their relationship with deity. And so I was like, people need to hear this. And if they could just hear who you are and how you develop spiritually, like, that's really inspiring. And I have found, I know it's a generalization, but LGBTQ people have such a fascinating relationship with God because they have had to wrestle. And I just love being able to hear that and learn from them. And then, once you know somebody's story, then you fall in love with them and you're like, wait, tell me more.
Right. And it dissipates some of the preconceptions of like, oh, is this a fad? Like that's just one of many things that people think. But once you get to know people, it's like, oh, it's not about learning in a book. It is about that proximity, and that's very that's what enlarges and changes hearts, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think action also comes from the work of this, right? Like there's the storytelling, the learning, the transforming people's hearts and minds, but then so much else has come from that, like similar again to history, like the Mattachine Society, right? Like didn't just gather and create community, they did, but then they started writing pamphlets and educating the rest of the world and doing, different political actions and things. And I mean, we don't write pamphlets anymore, but we podcast, right? And we're doing all these, the gathering curriculum, like all of these other things and projects, conferences coming from it, right? Like all of that stems from, I feel like, I may be wrong, but it seems to me they stem from these parent nights and ally nights that people just started doing organically to find community, to learn together, and look at all the cool ways that it's like transforming and growing and changing so many people.
And people have similar experiences to what Jen's talking about, like, well, I project manage. Well, this is what I do, and this is what. Oh, and this is, everyone can feel their personal revelation, and it'll be things that are in their wheelhouse that they can bring to the space.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the points I wanted to emphasize is that I think we all get intimidated that, oh gosh, I want to do something, it's going to be too much, or it's going to be things that I can't do. Mm-hmm. And I love, at least my interactions with deity and God have been, when I need to move into a space, I'm prepared, sometimes in ways that I don't even know that I'm being prepared. But when I move there, my talents shift and expand to be able to help. Like God is so good that God can be like, I need you over here. I know that's terrifying. So how do we prepare you so that when you step in there, you have the tools or the capacity? And I feel like God is very good in that. And I think our part is, can I listen to that little nudge or that little thought or whatever it is, because it's so easy to get lost in everything else we're doing, right? Yeah. We've all had thoughts of, I should call that person, I should text, I should do this, I should get out and do this in the community, and then life takes over, right? Something else gets in the way, and I think that's what I love.
Or we discount it, right?
Yeah, or we're like, think I can't do that. Someone else can do that better than me,
right?
Is a thought that I have a lot. There's someone else out there who can do that much better than Claire can.
There's not.
And Jen is just such a good example of that to me, where Jen is like, no, there's this thought or this idea, let's go there. Let's make sure we've acted on it. I sent you this email. I love that my email is full of Google Calendar invites from Jen because she's like, we have this idea. She's like, I'll send you an invite and schedule a meeting, because it makes it like, oh, that was worth it.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I'll just file it to the back, or I'll be like, that's...
And life gets
and whatever.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's also a really great story here about how to be an ally. Because I know that there are some worries, at least from what I hear, people tell me, like, I want to say that I'm an ally, but like, I don't have my ally card. Like, I don't know what that requires. I don't want to claim to be something I'm not, or I'm not doing enough. Or on the flip side, I think there are people who think, oh yeah, of course I'm an ally. Right? Like, I've never said anything bad or anti-LGBTQ, but they also haven't done or said anything positive, right? And so I think that there's some polarization there, and how do we diffuse that? Well, if you're having LGBTQ people in your home over for dinner, I think that's a really good indicator you're an ally.
Yeah.
If you're having conversations and going, I heard this, can you tell me more about that? Tell me more about yourself and your experience. Yeah. If you're asking someone those questions, you're an ally.
Yeah.
But if someone like that has never been invited to your home, if you're not having those conversations, then I don't think you're quite there yet. You maybe have an ally heart, but it's not, you got to have those conversations, right? And so I think that's what these sorts of grassroots efforts are doing, is allowing people to go, I feel like there's someone being misunderstood.
Yeah.
There's a demographic of people who are trying to speak and they're not having a space. And I don't have the power to give them a giant platform, but they can come into my home.
Yeah.
And just some things that are coming to my mind. A teacher that I taught with formerly, not for very long, but we became friends, and he moved on to a different job after a year. And when I came out, and he's in finance, right? Like something totally different. And he reached out and he said, hey, I heard you came out. I just want you to know I love you. Our family loves you. Can you come over? I'd love to have you for a family night. I just want my kids to get to know you.
Oh, love that.
And like, that is more impactful than I think a lot of other things, and more impactful than people think it would be. Of like, that sends the message of, I love you. I trust you in my home. And especially I trust you with my kids.
Yeah.
is really meaningful
And what
to
a
this
powerful
community.
thing for the kids.
Right.
too.
And for them to see like, oh, mom and dad are cool with this. This isn't something crazy. If they ever have something to then tell mom and dad, I know I'm safe.
Well, and even more importantly, they're willing to learn from you and let their
Yeah.
kids learn from you,
Yes.
right? Like you're not just a
Yeah.
guest; they're there to get to know you, to hear
Yeah.
what your life
And
is
when
like.
people feel loved and needed and important in that way, like your life experience is something worth sharing, it helps offset all of the other negative messaging, right? I was just texting with a former student this morning who is feeling really alone in this space and not ready to come out and not ready to do anything like that. But they're like, I just need to talk to someone. And for right now, that's me. So I'm like, please tell me whatever you need. But it breaks my heart that there's someone out there who feels alone when I know they're not alone.
Right.
And they're not ready to move into a space where they can be seen yet. But I just remind them, whenever you are ready, I've got a home. People come into it. I've got space. I know people your age. Like whenever you want to take that move, I want you to not feel alone. And that's how people are able to deal with the dissonance and the hurt and the trauma that is in this space. Is by feeling needed, feeling heard, feeling seen, and that their experience isn't just something to work through because it was traumatic, but their experience is meaningful and needed in the dialogue that we have in our world today.
Yeah, I love that, Claire.
If I could just say quickly, riffing off of what Claire said, I really appreciate that you named there's lots of different ways to be an ally. And that's so important. And I feel like the way I normally work, I would like want to research and, read the book about like 1,001 ways to be an ally. And okay, I have to know all the history.
Right.
Like Michael, you even referred to something and I was like, oh, I don't know about that history. Like, what's he talking about?
wow.
And I could let that really stop me and be like, I feel stupid. So I don't know. So I'm not going to say anything. And I think that's an important thing to recognize in ourselves. Like there's a lot to know about this space and don't let that stop you from taking just even some small action to be an ally.
Yes.
And maybe it's not wearing a rainbow pin. Like I got all decked out today in my shirt and my earrings and my socks and my la la la. But maybe there's allies out there who are just ready to like put their arm around the trans kid or just do like some super small action and that's okay. I just want to name that there's endless infinity ways to be an ally. So Michael, thanks for letting me interrupt because you were about to say something. So back to you.
No, I love that. That's so important. I guess this is kind of an impromptu question, but I'm curious. The United States is shifting tonal, in a cultural tone wise, for LGBTQ people. And that's our government, but also includes the church that we're all members of, especially for trans people. It's going to get worse before it gets better, right? And it's going to impact our whole community in some pretty significant ways in the coming years. I'm curious if, and I know we're kind of in the first 6 months of these changes, really, but have you seen any needs changing in the groups that you host and with the people that come to these nights? Like, is anything starting to shift, or are you seeing people asking different kinds of questions or needing different kinds of support?
Good
question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I can't speak for Jen, but I haven't heard or seen anything explicitly come across yet. But in conversations outside of maybe just the ally night, I felt a pull for people to need to see and hear trans voices more. Yeah. Right? And more of the, instead of the passive, you're one of the letters, of course we want you here, but like, no, I want to elevate your voice, your non-binary, your trans, your queer voice of, I want you to stand right here next to me and I want you to be the first one to speak is kind of where my heart is and how I'm feeling. Yeah. Because when someone is hurting, it can be, there's a couple different ways we react to that, right? The reaction of I'm going to step in front and I'm going to shield you. Yeah. And I want to do that for a lot of people, but also knowing that those are so strong, and have been through so much that maybe they don't need me to stand in front of them right now. Maybe they need me to stand next to them and go, if you're getting hit, I'm getting hit too. Yeah. If you're hurting, I'm hurting. Yeah. If you're on the front line, I'm on the front line, right? Yeah. And then it's not I need to protect you. It's we're going to link arms and do this together, right? And so I think that's some of the internal things that we're feeling and hearing of okay, how do we elevate these voices so that they're the ones that are heard first right now?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who are being hurt the most right now, right? And so that has impacted me, I think, in who I'm reaching out to, who I want to elevate, who I'm thinking for podcast guests or for speaking engagements and different things. But I want that to be a noticeable shift for the time being, because I can't be quiet, and I don't know how to be louder in different ways. So that's my getting louder. I don't know. I took it over, but
That's lovely.
No, it's great. Yeah. I'm hearing that.
Yeah.
I would say I haven't noticed a difference in our group, but I think Claire and I agree that we're trying to reach out more.
Yeah.
And I know my husband and I talked to our bishop and the stake presidency with the policy change, and just said, hey, how can we nurture the trans people in our congregations? And we have a trans man in our ward, and just, talking with their mom and saying, what can we do for your family to help you feel more comfortable at church? And so there's a lot of pain right now.
Yeah.
And so, and I think we've always experienced the sensation in our ally nights of, often the moms are kind of the first responders. They're the first ones to rally around their kiddos when they come out. And often at our ally nights, we'll get a mom, and you can almost recognize them when they walk in, because they look like a deer in the headlights of just a little bit lost. And I don't really know anybody here, but my friend told me to come, and my kiddo just came out, and I don't really know what to do. And that's the thing that I love about our group, is I can say, hey, go talk to Liz. She runs a group, and go talk to this person and this person. And we, interestingly enough, have a lot of moms who are therapists that come to our night. And so I can say, go talk to them. And so it's just really neat to have these personal connections. And so, that's one thing that's always felt very special, is we're just walking them into this comfortable landing spot of okay, I can be seen and heard here. Because there really isn't another space like this.
There's not.
And so it does feel comforting.
I'm noticing, and I'll walk with you at the private Facebook group for parents, and also at parent nights, that we seem to be, even though the percentage of trans and non-binary children is smaller than lesbian and gay, we seem to have a larger influx of parents, because there is nowhere else. There are so many voices in the world and in our faith community and all the way around. And so it seems like we have a higher percentage of parents coming, not because there's more, but because they are so in need of connection, of resources, of a safe landing space, like you said. So I do see that. And I have been seeing that even before the policy change. But even more so, people are just really, parents with children who are like, well, what am I going to be able to do regarding baptism, regarding different things, let alone adults, attending the second hour of church. And I think, Jen, your example of going, I reached out to our stake president and our bishop and just said, hey, this new policy has dropped. I would love to be a resource. And we have people, from our leadership who come to our parent nights, and I so appreciate their willingness to do that and be out of their comfort zone, but I think they are always fed, and they always give good feedback, and have knowledge that they didn't have, and experience and information that they didn't have before, because that may not touch their family in a way that some of these other families have.
Well, most likely it won't, right? Trans people are 0.5% of the general population at most, at most. So most people aren't going to have a trans person in their family, but the trans people and their families have these spaces to go to, and then have people to advocate. Like Jen, you're talking about the trans person in your ward. The Braddocks did the same thing for me, right? They basically, I had a very bad experience from someone in my old ward as soon as the policy changed, or actually right before, and the Braddocks basically were like, yep, we're not going to let this happen. And they talked to our stake president, because we were in the same stake, and they were just like, okay, Michael, come to our ward. We're going to make this a safe space for you, And it's the legislative session. So right now I work on Sundays, so I don't go to church right now, but I'll go to the first hour to that ward because I feel safe there, and then I'll leave when things get gendered because the policies are weird now. So, and I don't feel like it's right to, participate, but yeah, I think that makes such a huge difference, just knowing that there are people that will stand up for you, or if I want to go to church, I know I can call all of you and be like, hey, can I come with you? And you'll be like, yeah.
Well, and that's one thing I learned from Greg Peterson is like the experience of walking into church and being like, hey, can I sit here? Oh, sorry, that seat is saved. Just having a safe person to sit by
makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
When you're already feeling maybe uncomfortable and awkward,
Yeah.
I mean, and that goes for everyone, right? We should be aware of that for everyone. We know someone who's single or, there's so many things we should be thinking about. So I would love to hear any thoughts or experiences you've had with people. Like I just mentioned that we've had leaders that come regularly to parent nights who've come and participated in an ally night. Was there anything that stands out when you've had somebody come where I know when I've attended ally nights, I love the questions that get asked. There's so many great questions, whether it's from leaders or parents. I think that's a great opportunity for other people because it's not like you guys are like standing up there decreeing, here's the answer. It's a community effort of, here's something that I've learned and here's something that's helped me. And I love that because that's so important for people. Listening to a podcast is great, but you don't get to say, but wait, I have a question, And so this is a place where people can do that.
I'm thinking of some of the guests that we've invited. We've had a recently returned missionary, and when they spoke, they invited there was a missionary couple in their ward, and they invited them to come, and they invited their bishop to come, and they showed up. And I'm also thinking of a young adult, and then his mother spoke and did a tandem night, and they invited some of their local leaders who actually showed up, and there are always people that we invite that we wish would come and haven't showed up. In different wards that I've been in, I've invited and reached out to leadership and haven't had a response of people to come. Sundays are busy. I know that, right, always. But I think I've noticed for the people who do come, and when someone is speaking and their family and their local leadership show up, I think that is also really helpful, even just in sitting there and seeing someone in their ward invited them to come and do something, and they showed up. They weren't scared of the space. To be able to come and go, oh, there's nothing crazy going on here. This is just like when we have an activity in our ward and we have people come over. All of those things. And so I think that helps because sometimes people go, gosh, I would love to invite my bishop, but I don't know that they would respond. And seeing someone else go, oh yeah, I did. I invited and they came. A lot of times people needed a personal invitation for something. And so I think that those are the things that are coming to my mind of seeing people go, oh, they invited their stake president and their Relief Society president and the missionary couple in their ward and they came. Maybe people would show up for me. And that's what I want, is that people would always have people to show up for them. Right? That's the community that we want to build. Those are the communities of when my person or my people are doing things, I'm going to show up and be in that space with them for them.
I love that.
Do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I would say we extend a lot of invitations, and I have had a lot of positive feedback of, like my stake president will say, I probably won't ever make it, but please keep me on your email list. Right. And one thing that I felt, again, inspired, which makes it sound like I'm inspired all the time, but I'm just telling you the highlights of at the Gather conference. Listening to other leaders talk about how they handled things in their stake. Again, I was like, wait, I've talked to our stake presidency and our bishopric. Why did I leave out the female organization leaders? And so I went to all three auxiliaries for both stake and ward level, just to let them know what we're doing and talk about how, if there's 7 to 21% of your congregation who identifies as something other than heterosexual, like let's run some numbers and think through how many people is that in your ward? Do you know of anybody? And most would go, oh, I know this one person in our ward who's gay. And I was like, okay, we're talking like at least 25 to 40 people in the ward. If you don't know, and they would sometimes be like, well, I'm sure they've just self-selected to not attend anymore. And I was like, maybe. And there's still probably lots of people in our congregation who are. Anyway, inviting them to come. So I have had our Young Women's president, our Relief Society president, and our Elders Quorum president come. One interesting thing in regards to leadership is both Claire and I met with Greg Peterson and Julie and Jeremy Spilsbury and the public affairs person, Candace Koppel at the time, with President Paul Piper, who was the area president at the time. Right. And he had some questions, and we told him a lot of what we were doing, and he was like, "This is great. You know, we love what you're doing." And so that was really good to hear that they're excited. And he said, "We probably won't ever start a program like this. So we need people like you to be doing this work." So
But that has a trickle up effect because Elder Piper is actually the person that I worked with to get the church to work with us on the Mesa non-discrimination ordinance and help, like literally is, and like without you all doing that work and helping him understand the community and meet members that care about this, you know, Elder Piper might not have our conversation, right? Might not have gone the way that it did. And at this point, he and his wife and family are dear friends. And I was so sad when they moved to Africa. Like, I was like, oh, I'm going to miss you so much. But, you know, just amazing people. But it's this work that actually makes that possible because he knew people in the church that cared about this, right? And that's so important. Then that opened up his heart and his ears and his mind to meeting me and talking about policy, right? And then talking about how we can work together. Like, it's such a powerful trajectory. I always say that members of our church are like the best organizers and could cure everything in the world, because we are. You guys are just, you're explaining.
Been trained from very young.
For real, but like basic organizing principles, but like expert level, like you all just do it all the time. And it's inviting people, right? That's how it starts.
I love that.
I heard a quote from a friend who was telling a story, and it stuck in my brain this week. And it was, they said there are two kinds of, and I always love these statements, right? There are two kinds of people, and I'm like, oh, the dichotomy again. But this one is, I think it's interesting, right? So there are two kinds of members. There are the members of our church who know someone who's LGBTQ, and there are the members of our church who don't know that they know someone who's LGBTQ. Yes. And I went, oh, yeah. Yes, agreed. And I think that's it. And so I think a lot of these conversations, and I think, Michael, you just gave us a great example of it, but we sometimes can't see the ripple effect. And in conversations that I have, and I know that Jen has done a better job of reaching out to her local leadership. I haven't felt like I've had a lot of changes in my wards, and so I haven't really settled into a ward again and been in a leadership role or calling, but sometimes just having that one conversation, we can't see where it's going to lead. Right? And sitting down with the Relief Society president and going, okay, so if someone in your Relief Society said, okay, I'm bi or I'm a lesbian, what would you do? And them going, well, I have no idea, and go, let's talk about it. Because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I think those are such good conversations to put on people's radar. Right? And to tell parents of, like, if you had a child come out, how would you respond? And if you can comprehend that conversation, then it's going to have so many more effects on you than anything else I think that we could do, right? It's just asking those questions. For a bishop, of if you had someone who just came home from a mission and you had this conversation and they said, well, I think I'm leaving the church, what are you going to say? Because if you say these things, I can guarantee you they're not going to ever come back in your office again. They're not going to come back. And you might go, not my responsibility. I hope you don't, but you might. But if you've practiced it, then maybe we can minimize the terrible, awful conversations that have happened and have better, productive, cooperative ones.
Well, and you can be Jesus finding the one, right? Like you may be relieved if you don't have those skills, that you don't have to deal with this. But if you do have those skills, right? And if we as people in this community and as amazing organizers, you know, invite people into these conversations, you may be changing a family's life. You may be changing a neighborhood's life. You may be changing an entire city's life, like you all did, you know, by
and it can come back to your own family. I think that is so amazing.
It can come back to people you care about too. So on a personal note, the last time that I used a bathroom in a church facility, and it will be the last time until the policy changes, Elder Piper and I were having lunch at General Conference with his family, and I was, you know, I stood up and was like, I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back. And he got up, put his arm around me. He was like, let's go together, and we went and used the men's room, walked back, just normal. But I'll never forget that because, that's literally the last time that I may ever use a bathroom in a church facility. But he was there to walk with me and to be my friend and my ally in that moment. And all of that started because you all were willing to have a conversation with him. That's
amazing.
Yeah. A family that's been on my mind that I grew up with. So the wife and the mother was really close with my sister Chloe, was her young women's leader. And so we, Chloe's the youngest in my family, so this leader had she's the same age as my oldest brother, right? So there's I didn't know her when she was that age, but anyways, so we knew each other tangentially, friends, awesome, great. Chloe got close with them, and then we became friends. And as I came out, she was always like, "Hey, thank you for sharing your story. I want to learn all the things I can about you, and I love you and your family and your sister. How you doing?" She'll check in on me, listen to my podcast, on all of these things. And then a couple years later down the line, now it's her family, it's her kiddo who has come out, and she's looking for more resources and different things. And we had a conversation where she just said, when I was trying to be your friend and realize I love Clare no matter what, I had no idea what was coming in the future for my family. And I think that is just such a beautiful closed loop for me, that we're always there's people I love and it's fine. And then suddenly it's oh gosh, God was preparing me for conversations I was going to have that would be so significant to me that I had no idea. And God is maybe you should listen to that podcast and read that book and have that conversation now. And you don't know why, but I do. And I hear those stories all the time, and it's so meaningful. And so I think that is just a great way to summarize what being an ally looks like. Is God isn't asking you to just defend nameless, faceless people. God's calling you to a space because there are people who you love right now who need you to have these conversations today because of the ones that are coming tomorrow.
Absolutely. We could talk for hours. I love you people.
We could.
Yes, I want us to touch on two things though before we finish. And one is the three of us work on the Arizona Gather conference that's sponsored by All, and on the other side of me is one of our presenters. So I just want us to talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah.
It's coming up March 29th. That's a Saturday. It's free because All does sponsor it. But we would love you to register if you were so inclined at gatherconference.org. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah.
And can you name what All is? You use that acronym.
Oh,
I
yes,
want to make
sorry.
sure people know.
All is an acronym for Arizona LDS LGBT, and also all are like unto God. And we've been doing conferences for, I need to get the exact, I think it's been 15 years at least.
Pretty close.
Wow.
And not for the couple of years during COVID, but it's amazing. So we have Patrick Mason will be presenting, Reverend Dr. Marian Edmonds Allen will be presenting, Michael Soto will be presenting, Lynette Braddock will be presenting, and Claire is going to help do
moderating a panel.
Yes, thank you. And what else can we say about it? It is literally one of my favorite things of the year besides Christmas. Do you know what I mean? It's right up there.
It's a one-day event. It's on a Saturday. It's at the Red Mountain Multi-Generational Center in Mesa. Again, as Liz said, it's free. We do ask that you register just so we can kind of
numbers
have
we
names
do have
and
food.
things ready. We're going to have food at the end, which always, helps people take a breather when you don't have to sit and listen. But there are snacks, there's food. But it's just a great space to gather. And I was able to speak at the conference when it was just the All Conference in 2022, I believe I spoke. And every year that I have gone, so I guess the past 3 years now, I meet someone who's in that space who is like, hey, I've been wanting to talk to you. Right?
I've run into people like, why are you here? Well, why are you here?
Right. Every year I've seen one or two or more of my past students who are in this space for some reason, whether it's for themselves or a sibling or a loved one. And also local leadership will show up and go, okay, someone suggested this. There's someone in my ward I'm here for or trying to learn and understand. And so it's a great space to hear speakers, to to be in this space where maybe if you're a little bit worried about going to someone's house, that seems like I don't know, that's too small, I'm too personal, a little nervous. But if you want to come and be with a couple hundred people, and hear the space, I think it's a great opportunity.
It is. It's such a good thing. When our son had finally graduated from BYU, I presented as a parent. And anyway, it's just been, it was our safe place before he was out. And anyway, I cannot rave about it enough, but we are so excited and we want people to know about it and to be excited about it. So.
And it's a month away from tomorrow. It's coming
up almost. Well, and I really want to honor the work of Bryce and Sarah Cook, who laid major foundations for all of us to build on, and still, supports the conference. And so we just really appreciate him. Absolutely. And it is really neat to hear, like Ben's story of how this was the first time he ever came to a gathering that had LDS and LGBTQ people, because that's one thing that's so heartbreaking for me to hear Ben and Charlie talk about how when they were at BYU, they thought they were the only ones. And hopefully now things have changed enough to people know that they're not the only ones. But even if they're feeling like they're the only ones and they only have one other person to talk to, like, this is so important to come and be like, there's a whole community here for you to, again, feel comfortable with, feel accepted and at home.
Well, it's great. I'm so excited for it.
It's going to be so fun.
And then one other fun thing that, because you have no spare time in your lives. Tell us about the Belong Conference. It's conference, right?
Yeah.
Belong Conference. Okay.
Yeah, the Belong Youth Conference.
Belong Youth Conference.
The last weekend in June, we are on the board for putting together a youth conference. It's an FSY style youth conference up in Provo. It's going to be held at the Marriott Center. We're very excited about it. And I think it really ties into the question that Michael asked earlier about, like, are you hearing people talk about the policies that have recently come through and kind of the target that trans people have directly on them right now. And that's one of the big motivators for this conference, because it has become a difficult thing for trans or non-binary or queer youth in the church to know where there's places, especially with youth programs and attending them. And there have been a lot of restrictions put on them. And I have heard from families and youth say, well, I'm just not going to go, right? Yeah. That's the easiest choice, which I think is the choice that they're being pushed to make, is just not to be involved. Yeah. And we want this conference.
You mean not to be involved with church?
Well, to not be involved with youth camps,
right.
or
like FSY,
FSY or young men's camps.
Yes.
And so we really want to emphasize that a huge motivation for this youth program is we want you to come. Yeah. If you're between the ages of 13 and 18, if you identify or think you might be queer or trans or non-binary or any of the letters or anything, and you think that there isn't a space for you to gather with other youth. Yeah. We want you to gather with us. Yeah.
Well, and ally youth are invited as well.
Absolutely.
So, yes. LGBTQ and those who love them.
Everybody. So, and especially people who think that there isn't a space for you in organizations and anything that is spiritual, Christ-centered, all of that. We want you to come. And so it's going to be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it's June 26th, 27th, and 28th.
Okay.
And we have arranged with Marriott for people who are attending our conference to also get a discount on hotel rooms. So if parents need to fly them in or want to come in, a great place to be able to stay, to know you're at the venue. Right. You don't have to worry about your kids going around different places. But we are focusing parts of our programming on understanding Trans 101. In fact, Michael is going to be teaching and helping us about, like, what is true, what isn't true. Right. Let's get the facts straight. Yeah. And then also just having places where you can figure out who you are without the stigmatization and the pressure and the discrimination that are faced in other places. So we're very excited about it. We are just absolutely over the moon to be able to have an opportunity to do it. And we're expecting big things, and we're going to have so much fun for it. So we are also looking for anyone listening, if you're a young adult and you would like to be a counselor. We had amazing counselors last year, and we want to double and triple and quadruple the size of the number of counselors that we had. So if you're an ally or you want to be in this space and you want LGBTQ youth to know that they're loved, please reach out to Belong Youth Conf or website and get the information, but we're going to have that call for counselors soon. And we just I'm so excited. I could go on and on and on, but I'll leave it there.
Just appreciate all that you do in the
Yes.
space. I mean, what a great thing for people. I don't know if people understand, but a part of the policy changes that occurred regarding trans people was it made it very difficult for youth to be able to attend even like a girls' camp or a scout camp, or I mean, we don't do scouts anymore, but a young men's camp or whatever.
Or a youth conference.
A youth conference, yes. Yeah. So that is why this is a very important space to have an opportunity for kids.
Yeah. And it's not going to be the same without you, like for the kids who are just deciding I can't be with God or I can't be there, it's not going to be the same conference if you're not there.
Yeah.
And I want you there, and our team wants you there, and we want you to be there so that we can look you in the eye and say we love you.
Yeah.
And we need you. We're not the same without you.
Amazing.
We're not going to let you disappear.
Yes.
Well, such good stuff today.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us and for giving us some ideas of things that can be so scalable in our communities to offer chances for connection and for love. I mean, honestly, if we boil it down to what we believe as followers of Jesus Christ is that we do go after the one, that we do look for those who are not finding safe spaces amongst us. And we try to make that even just in our on our street, somewhere that is better for people. That is what, for me, being a disciple of Jesus Christ boils down to. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Another episode
Thank you.
of
So great to
All
see you.
Out in the Open.
Yeah. Thank you.